the front of the mask, I tried to go for like how I think the world sees me. I often have a hat on. No, I don't today. But the three words I wrote on that one are curious, critical, creative. I like alliterations. So there's that. I mean, I really want people to see my genuine curiosity and desire to learn. I think modeling that as an educator is one of the most important things we can do. I also think it brings out a lot of the kind of things I want to have come out in a learning setting. And I'm proud of it. I just think it's a quality that I'm proud of.
That was the voice of this week's guest, Sam Seidel. Sam has spent over 20 years working in, designing, launching, and writing about schools and youth programs. Sam is the K-12 Lab Director of Strategy and Research and the Director of Products and Publications at the Stanford D.school. And he has co-authored and co-edited 4 books that are all linked in the show notes below. His most recent book in 2024 was with Chris Emdin called From White Folks Who Teach in the Hood. This is a companion to Emdin's 4 White Folks Who Teach in the Hood that came out in 2016. Sam and I have met many times at the D.school and in many activations around the world as we work to transform K-12 education. Today we discuss, 1, the fatigue and apathy that teachers are grappling with new initiatives and administrators coming and going. 2, Sam's research on school shootings and his experiences with active shooter drills. 3, how you can implement the Stanford D.school's School Safety Net program. And 4, what Sam learned from his father, who was also an educator, about what gets him out of bed every morning. Are you ready? Take out your notes and get ready for today's show. As a male educator at your school site, it can get lonely. Only 23% of K-12 educators in America are male. And just think about what this gender gap means for your male students. They experience disproportionate levels of discipline. This is a show for male educators who want to feel more understood by their community and want to create emotionally safe classrooms and schools for the next generation of male students. Welcome to Unmasking with Male Educators. How are you? How are you, Sam? How are you?
Whenever I'm with you, I feel 27% better than I did right before I was with you. So I'm feeling pretty good in this particular moment.
Well, I appreciate
I'll try. I won't go to the global answer maybe, but in general, yeah, right now I'm feeling good.
So, I love numbers. So you said 27. I'm like, okay, but my mind goes into all these number iterations and permutations and 3 times 3 times 3, and that's 3 to the third power. I don't know where 27 came from, but that's a beautiful way to start. So as a math nerd,
I was going to say 20. It felt too low. Then I was going to jump to 30. I was like, I could go there, but it feels like that's extreme. Like, let me just land it. It's a noticeable shift. It's a statistically significant boost. So I don't know. It's probably higher to be real, but I was trying to land it somewhere in the realm of reason.
I love it. I appreciate it. It's good to be with you.
It's
again,
real. It's real talk. I mean, I know I was also trying to be a little silly with it, but I will say, especially in this moment that we find ourselves out of like all the years I've been on this planet, which is getting pretty close to a half century, being with people that I just trust, respect, feel safe with. I don't know. It's just, there's a different level. Like if it was 27 a few years ago to be around you, it's 40 now. It's just, it's if I go a day where I don't get time with someone who I could talk about in that way that I just described to you, it's a rough day. Like that night, I'm not okay in a lot of ways. And, and days where I have 1 conversation like this, 3 conversations like this, I'm blessed where some days I might have dozens of conversations like this because we're, you and I have been out in the mix in some extreme, social circumstances. Those days feel different, and even though I'm not, I think I'm probably an ambivert, as we probably all are on that spectrum somewhere. It just matters right now to get these moments. So thanks for inviting me to have this conversation, and thanks anyone who's listening to us talk. Thanks for creating a reason and a space for Ashanti and Sam to get together for a few minutes.
Well, I think in the realm of education and the work that you're doing, the work that we've been trying to do, our paths have crossed in a lot of those ways. And so, for folks who don't know you yet, I'm glad to not only know you but call you a colleague and a friend in this education landscape. Will you introduce yourself to folks? Let them know what you want them to know about you before you and I jump into these masks.
Sure. Yeah, peace, everyone. My name is Sam Seidel. I'm a father, a son, grandson, husband, a brother, a cousin, an uncle. I work at the Stanford D.school, where I direct our products and publications and our work in co-direct our work in K-12 education. And I'm an author of several books, mostly about education, but also about creativity, culture, race, identity. Yeah, those are a few ways I can talk about myself.
Well, because we're going to talk about education and educators, us being men in this profession, why don't we start with the mask, and then maybe the mask will just kind of help us drop into just the right now and what's happening really present, as you as an educator. And so, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Why don't you kick us off? You're a pro, and I'll try to learn a little bit about how you share, and it'll help me think about how to share what I just created.
Well, I think, as we talked about before we started recording, I was like, because I make a mask every time, I'm like I need to go back and they're a lot of them, that from this series has been over here on the side of me. And then the other ones from the past are over there. So I'm gonna start now pulling them all together because I have them. And I think I would love to go. I'm gonna go back on my own. As you said in the beginning, I was like, oh, wait, you know what? I make a mask every time. Let me go back. That's over 200, almost 300 masks that I've made in these shows, So let's, today's show mask is as fresh as it could be, So here we go.
Nice.
So this is what I drew. I'm working on a design from that image right there, but that's the mask. And then the words I wrote today were things I let people see. And me as an educator, when I'm in front of a group of students, or when I was a teacher in a classroom, here are the ones that I think are pretty present that I try and show. Dedicated, busy, but I'm caring, right? So dedicated to this work. I'm passionate about being an educator. I care about this work. I am busy. I'm trying to do more than just in the classroom teaching. And then when the bell rings, I leave. I'm doing other stuff around, I think, in the school, in the community. That's definitely when Ever Forward Club started. But I want my students to know that I'm caring, that I'm there because I care. I'm not there for a check per se. It's a job, it's a career, but I'm there because the work called me. And so that's the front of the mask that I try and show as an educator. And the things I don't talk about as much, I don't show as much, is getting irritated, self-doubt, and even letting the thought of what's next come up. Like, I don't, in my mind, when I became an educator, when I left engineering to become a teacher, I was like, I didn't want to think about I was here only for a little while. I didn't want the energy. I didn't want that to be coming from me. He's just waiting for his next thing. Right. So, and I met people like that in education who you can just say, oh, they're just here for 2 years just because they're going to go to their next thing. Right. I wanted to be rooted. So sometimes even thinking about what was next was almost felt like I was cheating. Right. So I was like, what's next? What am I doing? I know I'm here to become a teacher right now, but is this forever? Am I going to be doing this forever? And I didn't feel that it was going to be in the classroom forever, but I didn't have a plan. I would literally just kind of follow the journey. And then the self-doubt, I think, is more just around, I'll go to the irritated because that's a new one that I haven't used in a while. I think in education, my irritation often had to be tempered because I met so many people in education that were very thin skinned and they took it personal if you criticize the way education looks or whatever. And so you end up having to be like, all right, we're going to just pretend like everything's going good, even though we all know that it's not, So I think the irritation I didn't talk about as much, but deep down, I felt many days I was going into school just feeling irritated by the systems of education, not by the students and not by mathematics, like what I loved, but the system that was getting in the way of me doing that work better. So that's my mask today.
Wow. Thank you for sharing it. And I'm super curious. I would be super curious in any way to get your reflection, looking at hundreds of them. And, what's the most, a word cloud would be amazing. Just your reflection of flipping through, how they've, has it kind of been a pattern of how it's changed over time? Any of that, just what a cool thing to have. It's almost like if you were measuring your heart rate over years, or, these kind of biometric things people measure now with rings and apps and all that, but just a really beautiful analog sort of way of tracking parts of yourself. So thank you for for sharing. All right, I'm up.
It's your turn.
Okay, I think I did the page kind of right here. The front of the mask, I tried to go for like how I think the world sees me. I often have a hat on. No, I don't today, but the three words I wrote on that one are curious, critical, creative.
Mm.
I like alliterations, so there's that.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I really want people to see my genuine curiosity and desire to learn. I think modeling that as an educator is one of the most important things we can do. I also think it brings out a lot of the kind of things I want to have come out in a learning setting. And I'm proud of it. I just like think it's a quality that I'm proud of and want to like emphasize them, cool. I sandwich critical between curious and creative. So curious and creative are very d.school-y words. Ashanti, I mean, that's how I feel. It's like they're literally in the title of Sarah's book about all the d.school activities. It's creative acts for curious people. But cynical, or critical rather, critical is not in there. And I think that like that is an important part of what I try to bring is like, yes, I'm curious. Yes, I'm creative. But also I think there's a space for critique. Like some stuff needs critique, whether that's like we made 3 prototypes and we're kind of critiquing each of them to try to figure out something we're bringing forward. Or it's like we're looking at a social system and some history and being like, there's some really harmful things that have happened and we need to just name them. And it's not a super generative and upbeat moment, but it's like part of how we get somewhere better. So if I were to like kind of leave one, I don't know, legacy or something at the d.school, it would probably be like amping up the critique or critical piece of what we're encouraging, like creative confidence, creative courage, but also critical confidence and courage. I don't know that I can say that I've contributed that at large to the institution, but it's something that I want present in my life as an educator. And then I did end on creative. That's a big part of like who I've always tried to be and what I think is needed in the world and that I want to bring to it. Those are my 3 C's for the front of the mask.
That's beautiful. I didn't know you're an artist. That's a beautiful image you created. So thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, man. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I do think of myself as an artist. I'm not sure I'm a visual artist, but I have fun trying to do that kind of stuff and have learned a lot from my colleagues. So on the back, I only got to 2. And I think, part of it was I was thinking of a lot of words and I've done a lot of work to strip away, I think, like to show more of my full self. So a lot of the stuff felt inauthentic. I was like, yeah, maybe 20 years ago, I would have said X or Y, but I actually feel like I've only got 2 right now. Maybe I'll think of a third as I talk. And the 2 I have are cynicism or cynical and Jewishness. So on the cynical tip, I think I said it almost accidentally a minute ago when I was talking about being critical, but I think there's a difference. And I'm proud and want to like kind of show and share the critical side. I think I'm cautious about how cynical I often feel and not feeling like it's a super generative thing to share or like put on others. So I think I kind of intentionally hide that or tamp it down, or I don't know what the right word is exactly, but it's not something I show, at least not intentionally. So, if asked or pushed, I can go there in a learning setting, a teaching setting, but it's usually kind of kept more to the back. And just to be real with you, like the Jewishness thing, it felt really vulnerable to write it down because I don't actually know what to say about it, but I just think it's true. Like, I don't think I lead very often with that part of my identity. And I need to like dig into that a little, is that internalized anti-Semitism? Is that a caution because of political things and the way that Jewishness is being framed in a global context right now as like, that's a lot of people assume that means a certain allegiance with, the Israeli state and their actions. Like I need to dig more on it, but I do think of it as a pretty big part of my identity in certain ways. In general, I don't think of it as a big part of the identity I bring to a classroom or a learning environment. So why is that? I think there's probably stuff behind that I need to interrogate. But I wanted to share it just in the spirit of like, I think part of the beauty of this activity is the vulnerability that it elicits. And I did not wake up today thinking that would be on my mask, but there it is.
Thank you for that. Thank you for naming I like the way you said it. I need to interrogate that a little bit more. Like, what about the things that I'm thinking about or avoiding, or maybe not avoiding, just not thinking about that I as well need to interrogate. Like, okay. What are those things, right? Because I think when we think about the mask and the activity, when we think about the work we're trying to do in transforming education, how do we have educators who don't get stuck in like every either too far in the future into, oh, it's going to be great, or too far into like, oh, not to ignore the reality of what's happening in the moment, right? Because we want to have positive ideas, want to manifest a beautiful situation, but while it's really heavy and hard and difficult with the people sitting in front of us. And I think I've seen that so often. Educators not willing to interrogate why they're avoiding certain topics, you know?
Right.
And why they, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to build on that. So I used to do these site visits of schools as part of my work. I would bring groups from other schools to see a school. And this group of schools was all part of an initiative that had agreed we're working on certain things, right? And so when I would bring the groups, I would ask the school that was going to host the visit, what do you want people to keep an eye on? Like, what are you really working on and need improvement on right now? And, also ask, like, what are you proud of, right? The thing that people would say they were like needed the most help on was like something they were actually doing great at because they were already paying attention to it. It was the things that they weren't even saying, our advisories could be so much better. But meanwhile, like they had put tons of effort, like the advisory was off the hook. It was like, if you went around the country, their advisory would be like a 10 out of 10 compared to like what you were seeing elsewhere. But for them, they were like dug in on it. So they were like, there's all these ways it could be better. And maybe there was a little bit of like, I don't want to point people to the places where there's real challenges. I'll say to folks that are learning with me, like we all have a learning edge. It's not work that you finish. It's not like you get to a state of wokeness. I know that word is all loaded now.
Yeah.
Then I started to realize if a student were to turn it around on me and be like, well, Sam, what's your learning edge right now around equity? Like, what are you? And like, I didn't have a great answer because I'm sure I have them, but like, I didn't know what I didn't know. Like, I didn't know what to interrogate. So, I actually like engaged with a coach to try to help me find like, what are the areas I'm not seeing that I should be working on. But I say all that to say that the gift, if one of the gifts of doing the mask is that you might find an area that you need to interrogate, that's a huge gift from an activity that takes, less than an hour, right? I mean, I was paying a coach for hours of like work to try to find those spots. So I just wanted to point that out and put it in the context of some of the work that I've done and observations I've had both about my own patterns and patterns of schools.
And thank you for that. First of all, thank you, because what we have tried to do with it is to get more educators to use the tool as a place of that connection with not only themselves, but their students, right? And I think one of the things that we're trying to work on, we're always trying to, as a former D.schooler myself, right? Like, what are we trying right now to see what's causing the breakage, what's causing the blockage, what's causing the not movement of those things, right? And I think that's something really we're thinking about as well. So maybe as we think about education in a big picture, as we talk about it, kind of our experiences through education, what are some of the things you're seeing? Like when you were taking those tours, or even the way you're engaging with schools now, what are you seeing as some of the big challenges that either you're seeing on a higher education level?
Yeah, I'm trying to, there's a bunch. So I'm just trying to like organize a few thoughts for you. What are the like kind of patterns of challenges I'm seeing for K-12 schools? That's the prompt here?
Yeah, more just like in your gut feel, because you're hearing stuff and then you're feeling stuff, right? So what are the stuff you're like, as you're experiencing the higher ed side where you are right now, but also as you do see what's happening in K-12 and the work that the D.school is doing, working with educators, what are some of the things you're hearing from educators or seeing or like experiencing that is really making it difficult, right, for educators, making it difficult for students, making it difficult for, whatever layer that feels right for you, but what's coming up for you as you are in this profession that is under attack in so many ways on many levels, right? Not just on the high school, middle school, elementary school level, even on the higher ed level, even, right? So there's attacks on all the sides of education, but just what's coming up for you?
Yeah, man, I think about this so much, and there's so much there, Ashanti. I'll try to just hit a few, and maybe let's build together. And I feel it's hard. It's hard to prioritize like where to begin.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing about this moment is just the like forms of repression and the way that fascism is being rolled out, not just in our schools, but certainly impacting our education system. I mean, the dismantling of the Federal Department of Education, which for all its flaws also was created to try to ensure some amount of equity, for folks, particularly when it comes to socioeconomics and racism. And so to just see that obliterated, to like see book bans happening, see like the push on like the, I don't know, push back or whatever you call it on gender affirming both care on a medical level, but also like accommodation on a school, an athletic level. Like there's just so much happening related to like authoritarianism, fascism, and repression. And to lay that on top of how hard it was before for educators, it's pretty staggering. And I hear about that. I mean, I put out a book a year ago that I co-edited with Dr. Christopher Emdin called From White Folks Who Teach in the Hood. So that has been a beacon for even more people to reach out and be like, we're not allowed to have this conversation, or, to ask questions about do you have any advice on how to have this conversation within my district or school right now when we're not supposed to like say anything about race or racism? So I think it's like brought maybe a lot of that conversation to me.
Yeah.
That another colleague might not be, like, if they were going and doing design workshops, might not hear as much, or maybe they would. It's hard for me to say, but I think that part of my identity and my work has like magnetized a lot of hearing stories, horrible stories about like people really not being able to do the work that they know is right for young people. I have two more and then go where you want with them, and we could add to the list too. Another is initiative fatigue. I hear a lot like, well, we were supposed to be a project-based learning school, and then now everyone's talking about AI. Like, it's like, and, not everywhere, but a lot of places, there's such a revolving door of district leadership, of superintendents that, when I talk to teachers in districts, they're like, well, I'm just going to wait this one out, whether I like it or not. Like, I might actually genuinely be excited about the initiative, but I also know it's going to be gone in 2 years. So like, I don't want to put my heart in it and like get my heart broken again.
Yeah.
Or I think it's whack, but I'm like, whatever, it'll be gone in 2 years. I'm just going to close my classroom door. But there's such a cost to that, right? I mean, literally there's a cost because like resources are being poured into some new initiative that just goes away, but also a cost to like the spirit, right? It's like, then when something comes along that really is great, it's really hard to get people to be excited and participate for real reasons that make sense. Or something comes along that just demands it. The stuff with AI, there's a lot there. In terms of what are we preparing our students for, in terms of how it's being used in educational context, and in terms of what it's doing to our society, socially, how people interact with each other and what's about to happen on that front. So we need educators to be in that convo. And I understand why folks are like, everyone wants to talk about AI now. I want to turn my head and just not deal with it because there's been so many things where I've been asked to kind of do something similar. And then the third is just the issue of school safety, particularly gun violence in our schools. And it's like, I did a lot of work on that at the D.school with a fellow named Barry Spiegels, who came in as a fellow a few years after you. And, part of why I bring it up is that it's singular to this country. Like, it's so clear. Like a lot of the first two things I said, you could be like, Sam, that's happening in this country and that country and that country. Like, but this is one, it's like, come on, y'all. This is actually like, we're the only fools who are really like doing this. And it's really, and it's devastating. And one thing I learned in Barry and my work, and I'm happy to talk more about that work or not, but one thing I learned that I just want to share is I had a misconception that like, oh, that only affects students who are in a school where there's a shooting. But I shadowed a 6th grader in a very affluent school district when there was an active shooter drill. And I had this epiphany of like, or I don't know if it's epiphany, but like, for me, it was like, this is effective. These kids were terrified. And I was terrified. We all had to crouch in the corner because I'm shadowing her. So I'm doing what she's doing. I'm crouching in the corner with these children. And the teacher's talking about, okay, if the gunman is standing here outside the window, I need you to be over here. And I built this thing out of wood that I'm going to jam the door with. Like, and then he's like, back to our math worksheets. And I sat there and for the next 20 minutes, I reread the same math problem. But my mind was on like, I'm picturing this shooter that you just said might be outside the window. I'm about to cry talking about it. And I'm looking at and I tried to talk to the student I was shadowing, and I stopped because I was like, I don't think I'm qualified from like a psychological perspective. Like, I asked her like 3 times about how it felt or the drill. And then I started to be like, I think I need to step back, because like she wasn't going there. And I was like, I just had this instinct of like, I'm not equipped to push like on this. So that one, it would, the epiphany for me was like, you could be like, well, statistically, it's only this many students a year who are at a school where that really happened. It's not just about that. It's about how everyone's feeling, and educators too, and parents, like dropping my kid off. Do I have to worry about, on top of everything else, I have to worry about that?
Yeah.
We're not well on some levels.
I think that one got some fire, and I think that all of
Sorry, I did. I'm a new parent too, relatively new parent, so I think I'm like feeling it in a visceral way that maybe like when Barry and I were doing the work, I was feeling it viscerally, but it's a different visceral or something.
Yeah, and I think all the layers you experience it as, now you're experiencing it as a father who is now like, oh, wait a minute, what am I going to do with these thoughts and this worry, and not have my child worrying over excessively because I'm worrying, right? How do I not transfer this on to the child, but also how do I let my heart be at rest, knowing that I'm sending them out to a place that our society has decided, no, we don't need to, we're good. And the rules and the things that people keep suggesting, the people who would never do it themselves, like the people who are suggesting to give teachers guns, the teachers are suggesting that the teachers who are veterans should be the ones protecting the school. Do you think they didn't leave the military for a particular reason? Maybe you don't think let's just hand them some weapons to deal with kids who already are sometimes out of, like, I have seen it over and over again. And I think that for me is one that stands out a lot. And I think it speaks to a lot of things, and not only this episode and this show, but we're talking about men and young men. And sadly, most 98, if not 99% of school shooters are men, are young men. And I think that to ignore that, we keep ignoring the fact that, we can talk about a lot of the areas. We can talk about access to weapons. We can talk about that. We can talk about what is happening with young men who are doing these behaviors, who are going to that level. What are we not talking about in terms of when young men are hitting their overload? What do we do when we're feeling like overloaded with emotion or whatever that we feel people who are doing these behaviors, taking out on so many people, hurting others? And I think those things are what we continue to see as things that get ignored, not only in school, so social emotional development and learning. Like, that's the work that we're really trying to do around mental wellness. Those topics, I think, are critical, but I think they often get overlooked. They're like, well, no one at this school is getting hurting each other. No one at this school has been hurt, so we won't deal with it. And I think that is a dangerous way to do it. It says we'll just be reactive. We'll just deal with it when it happens, and we'll have thoughts and prayers for 2 weeks after. And then where are we at right now with the most recent school shooting that just happened in the first couple of weeks of school? The first couple of weeks of the school year, we've already had one, right?
Yeah.
There may be more than one. I don't even say the numbers wrong because they happen so often. We don't even get them covered as often as anymore. And so I think how that happens and how we allow that to continue happening. I've said this in my mind, but I've also said it probably not out loud often, and it may make people irritated, but it doesn't happen in the schools where the politicians' kids go to school. It doesn't happen in those schools because it would be likely that wouldn't continue when it was happening in those schools. And most of the politician kids are going to affluent schools. So imagine what we can ignore when it's not happening. It's not happening to my kids. It's not happening to my friends' kids. So, hey, it's the problem with somebody else to deal with it. And I think we have, that's a huge area that I keep saying we because I'm a part of this educational system. So I hold part of the responsibility of it, and I don't know what to do about it.
There's so much in that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut your wisdom.
No.
I mean, a lot of thoughts on what you were just sharing. So one is just because you mentioned the pattern around how often it's young men. I think a lot about race and how race functions in this society. it's also predominantly young white men. Naming that and talking about like, what is behind that? Why is that happening? I think is an important conversation that we shouldn't shy away from. Another thing that Barry and I found in our research when he was doing the fellowship on school safety was it's predominantly young, predominantly white who are known to the school community, who have been affiliated with the school community as students there or otherwise. So when you talk about something like mental health or connection or any, as soft skills or a nice to have, if the budget allows it this year, you're saying we're okay with alienating a young person who may then come back and do this. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what's at stake when we're talking about an advisory or a mask workshop or doing a student safety net, which is this great activity that I learned through the D.school where you just put every student's name up on the wall as a staff and make a mark next to every student who somebody, at least one person in the room knows by name. And at a big comprehensive high school, you got dozens, hundreds sometimes of names that no one on the staff knows by name, who's coming through your halls and classrooms every day. That's important. Now you can look at patterns. Is there a racial dynamic, a gender dynamic, a learning style dynamic, whatever? What are we going to do about that? So I think it's worth just noting what we can learn from those statistics. It's rare that it's just a total random thing that someone shows up at a school with a gun. It's rare. And so if it's people in our community, actually, like that means we have a lot of capacity to not let that happen. If that person didn't feel alienated, if they received mental health care, if they, if we did the things that we know work, that's not happening. Now, should there also be different gun policy? Like 1,000%. Like, I'm not trying to put it all on us. The educators got to fix it. And there are pieces we know a lot of this. Like, there's a lot of best practices or proven practices on these fronts. So I just wanted to name that piece because I hate the way that like some of the most important things get kind of relegated to being the like touchy-feely, nice to have if we have time pieces of an educational environment. It's off, and I think the stakes are literally this high in a lot of cases.
And I imagine that maybe we should definitely connect with Barry and learn more about what his findings were. I think it would be really powerful. I think.
Can I add one other thing based on something you said earlier? Sorry, I'm like tapped in on this right now. Like, you mentioned the affluent school dynamic, and I just remember something that struck me so much when I moved out to start working at the D.school was I asked somebody, why are there guards standing at or I didn't know they were guards at the time, but why are there people standing at every train track crossing, commuter rail crossing in Palo Alto all night? Because I'd be driving home late from the D.school sometimes and see folks sitting there with like a neon vest and, usually looking at their phone, just sitting by the train tracks. And someone said that there had been such a like epidemic of, I think I'm using that word appropriately, of suicides and suicide attempts. Now, this is, if not the first, the second most affluent zip code in the country. And you have to have people at every crossing because that's how young people are feeling in your community. That kind of rocked me. Like, you have everything in a sense. I mean, from a material sense, you've got access to all this resource. That's how young people are feeling. So I felt like it was important to mention as we talk about safety and health and young people's kind of survival that yes, you're making some good points about differences between schools based on the resources of the community and whose kids go there. And it's not like the rich kids are feeling that great from what I'm, from that one data point, but we could talk about other data points that suggest that. So what does that mean? And what do we do in that context? I think you and I have spent most of our careers thinking more about students who are in schools that are almost like furthest from that end of the spectrum in terms of access to material wealth. But I don't know. I think it's all connected, right? Because part of my belief is part of what's going on that feels so bad to those kids is they understand on some level that their largesse is directly related to other people's suffering. And I don't think that feels good. Now there's other things going on too with social media, and we could do a whole list on that. But anyway, just wanted to call out that there's an interconnection there that I think would behoove us to pay attention to.
Yeah. And I think that when you think about the what you talked about there, so there was a film made in Palo Alto when I was at the D.school. I'm trying to think of what year it was made, but It was about that situation, about that year, 2 years, 3 year period where it was just happening multiple a year. And it's a powerful documentaries.
Mm.
I'll link it in the show
Yeah.
notes.
Yeah. Please share it. Cause I have not seen it. And
yeah, it's powerful. And one of the young men who was interviewed actually, and so this is about the idea of self-harm and suicide. But if you think about like the idea of like, I'm going to go in and harm others, there's these two types of self-destruction, right? I'm going to take it out on myself. I'm so overwhelmed with whatever's happening. I'm going to take it out on myself, but not realizing that actually I'm taking out on everybody who cares about me and loves me too, right? But there's a difference part of that. And then I'm to one who says, I'm going to go in and take it out on a bunch of others. And I don't have any psychological explanation for that, but what I have seen in our community that we see in Oakland, the Bay Area, East Bay, is that a lot of young men, although they're not like all making those kind of decisions, they're just doing a slower take on it. Let me just get high every day. Let me just drink. Let me walk around with weapons. Let me hang out with people who I know.
In a wild, dangerous kind of way.
Driving all the ways, right? All the way. And
sorry, I feel like the last time you and I were in a car, we were seeing some like shenanigans on the road. Yeah, but just, I think it speaks to a similar thing you were just listing of like, I'm not valuing my own and perhaps other people's lives that much right now.
Yeah. And if I don't value mine, then why would I care about anybody else's?
Yeah.
Sam, as we wrap it up, we could talk forever, and we have had many times we had some good long talks. I think in this conversation, as we wrap to like helping educators out there today who are like in the classroom, there are male educators out there who may be in their high school, one of 5, one of 7, one of 1, maybe the only one, right?
Yeah.
I think the question is, what would you recommend that we either, what words of advice we offer them, or what can we recommend them to go investigate? What words you use? What word can we
interrogate?
What thing can we interrogate to not only help us sustain ourselves in this educational world that sometimes, and definitely in the K-12 setting has a lot fewer men there. But how can we help to like continue doing the important work, even when all these things are seeming to be like stacked against the people who care a lot about this work?
I'm so curious to hear your answer on this because, I think in some ways your career is your answer to this. So I think on some level I understand, but I would love to hear how you articulate it right now.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've been thinking, talking, writing, and working a lot more on how to answer that question for white educators. So different identity vector or whatever than thinking on the gender like vector. It's probably a lot of the same things, except because in our society, particularly being like a cisgendered hetero man is like this social, like it's a dominant, it's connected to privilege and power.
Yeah.
And in a similar way, perhaps, to whiteness. But the difference that you just raised is that while white people are definitely the majority of the teaching force, it's white women are the majority of the teaching force. And men, as you just pointed out, are a minority in the context of K-12 schools. So it is different in that way. And that raises some interesting pieces. I could try to share a little bit, but I actually, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear how you, at least a few points on like how you think and talk about that right now.
Yeah. When I talk to educators around how do we sustain ourselves, I taught for 10 years in high school, middle school, public, private, and charter. So I taught it almost, except for elementary school, I taught it all levels and all different types of schools. And what I saw was a very big difference in how teachers are treated and how teachers are held in high regard. And so what I have tried to do with educators is once I know what level they're at and what type of school they're at, are you high school private, high school public, high school charter, where are you at? Then to figure out what is I try to go from inquiry, right? But if I can't just offer information unless I don't know, but I'd say, I hope that you are finding the things that keep you fired up about this work. Because on a daily basis, if I get out of bed and I become a routine, I can easily get old. Now, I started Ever Forward Club my first year, so there was always more than just teaching for me. But if all you do is teach and then the bell rings and you go home and then you come back and you teach and you go home and you don't have a connection in that community, or you don't have a connection at that school, or you don't have a connection to a bigger vision of how this teaching takes you somewhere else, or takes the community or the students that you're teaching somewhere else, then you could feel like a revolving door of the things you said. I'm going to just check out to this thing. This is just 2 years. It's going to pass in. I met many of those teachers who had just gotten jaded. And I think that actually when you said that, it reminded me like maybe that's going to have to shift our narrative too about how we invite teachers to be a part of this movement, because they're like, oh, this is another thing that's going to be gone in 2 years. And you're like, well, your connection to students should be a part every year. You having a deeper connection to students should be a part of your pedagogy of teaching. So that's how I try and, at least, even without asking a question, but just kind of like, where are you? Why are you doing this work? And what do you see as your role in this work outside of just doing and grading papers and giving grades?
Yeah, I'm with it. I mean, just to add maybe I'm working, as you were talking, I'm thinking about what you're saying and how it speaks to this question around gender identity as teachers, and
or even, Sam, just without the gender identity connected to it, just, you as an educator offering words of encouragement to other teachers, even if they weren't just for the male teachers, right? But I think,
but I appreciate it's like the Jewishness thing from earlier. It's like something for me to interrogate. So I'm chewing on it in like a good way. Like I'm like, this is good. This is really, it's healthy. So a couple things. One, you said a phrase a minute ago about like trying to reconnect people with what gets them fired up to do this work. And I wanted to share I come from a family of educators, like both my parents, that's their lifelong vocation, as well as grandparents, as well as siblings. It kind of goes, it's pretty thorough in our family. One of the things I remember my dad saying to me pretty recently, like in sort of the very later part of his career, is like that he feels like so much of like what has made him a good teacher or what he's done in the classroom has come from anger, which totally shocked me, because one, I don't think of that as being a source for great teaching usually, nor do I think of him as an angry man. So I was like, he's like a very kind of mild-mannered person, very calm, very gentle. And so I was like, it was like a record scratch in our conversation. But, it made sense as he talked about it. He was like, there's things about the world that like I'm really upset about. There's things about the way I was educated that I'm really upset about. And a lot of his work in the later part of his career was teaching teachers. So it's like, that is his source. Like that's the fuel, is being like, this certain things shouldn't be this way. Certain things shouldn't be done this way. Like that's what gets me out of bed and makes me navigate all these systems and whatnot. So I just wanted to offer that as like, I think sometimes it's like anger, bad, joy, good, cynicism, or being critical, bad, being creative, good, and I get that because like joy and creativity do kind of put wind in our sails in a nice way sometimes, but also like that critique and that anger can be a source of the fire. So I wanted to kind of celebrate that and not make light of it, because that stuff is heavy to carry, and it's not like, that's a lot to ask of people to like sit in that and to have to deal with it day in and day out. But I do think from, the more I thought about what my dad shared with me, like I think it has truth in my life and my choices about how to teach and where to teach and all of these things. Just wanted to offer that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Why do we do this work? Do you do it out of this passion? Do you do it out of from a place of anger? I think Che Guevara talked about a revolutionary, right? A true revolutionary goes to battle and goes to war out of a place of love.
Yes,
so I'm going to have to go to war. I'm going to have to go to fight. I'm going to have to fight, but I'm fighting from a place of love. I don't want to be, right? Or I'm coming to this work because there's a place of anger that is causing me to like want to make it better. And so I love that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that closing on that.
Well, thank you to Pops.
Well, it's so good to have you, Sam. I could talk forever, and I appreciate you for being in this work. And thank you. Tell folks where they can find your books. You mentioned the book for white folks who teach in the hood. Is that what it's called, right?
So Chris wrote a book called For White Folks Who Teach in the Hood, which if folks haven't read, grab that one first. He and I worked on a companion book maybe 10 years later. I'm not exactly, sorry, I'm forgetting the publication dates of each, but it's called From White Folks Who Teach in the Hood. So he's a Black man who's an educator. So he kind of said, here's what I want white folks who teach in the hood to know. And then together, he and I invited 24 to say, like, here's how we're thinking about our work as white folks in class, in classrooms in this country. So yeah, From White Folks to Teaching the Hood, Hip Hop Genius and Hip Hop Genius 2.0, which 2.0 co-authored with Tony Simmons from High School for Recording Arts and Michael Lipset from High School for Recording Arts for Learning, and David T.C. Ellis is their runs those entities with them, and wrote a beautiful foreword along with Gloria Ladson Billings and D. Smoke and George Clinton and Herb Cole. It's so that family of books is like a total passion thing for me. And then Creative Hustle, Tunde Shibomahin and I put out through the D.school. And then we talked a bunch about school safety. So I'll mention Barry and I did a book that we published through the D.school called Changing the Conversation About School Safety. Folks can find links to all that and the other stuff that I do and I'm doing on my website. It's just samseidel.is. So SAMSEIDEL.is. And that'll give kind of a dashboard to all those books, to other writing, to some videos of some, keynotes over the years, things like that. But yeah, and as well as a link to reach out if folks have things they want to share or questions or whatnot.
Love that. Love that website. Thank you. samseidel.is. I love it. Sam, thank you for being here with us. Folks, Sam and I, we shared our masks here publicly. You don't have to share yours publicly. You can share yours anonymously at millionmask.org. Invite you to go make a mask. And when you get comfortable, find somebody in your life who you care about. And maybe you invite them to make a mask with you and you share it with them. Have a conversation like this. It doesn't take a lot of time. It just takes a care. Sam, thank you for being here with us. We so appreciate you.
Thank you.